So I was an urban planner. I worked for the Parks Department, and I did field work in a couple cities around the world. One of the things that urban planners have learned over the years is that people are constantly remixing whatever system you put in front of them. You give them a grid, you give them a street, you give them a stoplight, and they'll change it. So it could be something as simple as jaywalking, going through a light at 2 a.m., using a train for graffiti, putting up posters over here, or a homeless man sleeping on a bench. These are all things that we kind of accept as part of the way people move through space, but it's wholly different from the way that the planners intend this. And over time, planners have kind of had to learn how to accept this and move forward and create systems and create infrastructure that allows for interactivity. This is a picture of a community garden. A lot of the community gardens in New York, especially East Village and Lower East Side, were abandoned lots that in the 70s and 80s, people took over, they threw seed bombs into them, they planted where they were not supposed to. And I was thinking about this because of the iPhone. The iPhone came out, Apple's going to give you probably the most badass phone we've ever seen, and yet everybody felt this need, an almost sort of furious need, to hack it, or to take it over, or sort of say, you know, oh my God, what are you doing? Why can't I do this with the phone? So it's this sort of innate need that we seem to have, and we've seen it in planning, like this shortcut. Like, it may save you 5 seconds or 5 feet, yet one person decided, and then over time, maybe thousands of people have decided to do this as well. And it's this odd thing where it's individuality, yet participatory. So it's sort of like I'm giving, you know, a finger to the man as I go through this space. One way to dance with this, Radiohead, when they came out with Rainbows recently, they said, okay, rather than charging you 15 bucks, or rather than you just stealing it and downloading it for free, I'm going to give you a choice. You can do whatever you want. You can pay me $0, $1, $2, 5 cents, or what have you. And because of that, it got a good reaction, and people were happy, and they got to interact with it. The godfather of urban planning in New York is this guy named William White. In the 1970s, he studied urban space and open space in New York to see how people used it. And this book is sort of his compendium. It came out in 1980 and still reads fresh today. In the 70s in New York, as we may remember or know from the stories, fiscal crisis overrun by sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And while we may like it now, the people who lived there then were not too keen on it. So when William White, and the parks and open space was a mess. So, for example, Bryant Park, it was overrun by drug dealers and by prostitutes. And William White, the redesign of it in the early 80s, said, you know, among other things in terms of making it pretty and fountains, yada, 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 let's put out 3,000 freestanding chairs. Now, this may seem completely insane. You know, your drug dealers will build a shop, and your prostitutes will set up a brothel, and your homeless people will build a fort, and everyone else will steal the rest. And, you know, so you have homeless people, taking it over, it's going to suck as a park. But what he realized was that if you have 3,000 chairs there, everybody can come to this park and customize their experience. So you say, you know what, you and me and Rafi are going to come here and pull our chairs, we're going to sit down and have lunch, and then I'm going to leave, and the sun moves, and so then when Susan comes, she moves her chair, and she can sit in the sunbeam. So everybody who comes to the park gets to create their own story. They get to customize their time. They get to remix their time. And as a result, very few chairs have been stolen. Very few bad things have happened to this park, as you may think. On the flip side, on a drawing board, this makes sense. You say, you know what? No room for chaos. Everybody's going to come in, they're going to sit there, and it's going to be awesome. Like, no reason to do anything bad. But what happens is you can't customize this. So in a planning sense, a lot of these parks, a lot of these empty plazas end up with what are called undesirables, which is simply skateboarders, drug dealers, sex workers, homeless people, and teenagers. That's not my bad. So I mean, we're here, we're at the Eiffel Tower, and it's a completely empty space. And I didn't take this photo, but I've been there. And, well, I've been there, and, you know, at night, it's kind of shady. During the day, it's, you know, it's not where people are sitting and gathering and talking and meeting, where it could be. I mean, you're looking at the Eiffel Tower. Well, I don't know. Okay, so there was supposed to be a slide, Spider-Man, before that. And the reason being, it's modes of seeing. How different people see different space. So you have this empty space, there's nobody there, and then if nobody's there, certain people will say, cool, this is awesome, I want to be here because I'm doing things that society says are not acceptable, while others say, I don't want to be there at all. Now, the subway grade on the street, it means nothing to me, I'm wearing flats. Homeless person, it means warmth. A woman in heels, it can be a liability, you know, a trip to the collar. And to a skateboarder, it is a, you know, a potential accident. So it's one static element that's being interpreted 4 different ways. And there's a slide here of many different beautiful people of many different races and men and women, and it's really happy. And so my point being there is that in the idea of modes of seeing from a planning perspective, you have, from an urban planning perspective, everybody is interpreting this different ways. So what about the way that different people may interpret your brand, if you're cutting it across race or class or gender or religion or what have you? This skateboarding is probably one of the best examples of modes of seeing we've seen in history. Late 70s, drought in LA, pools are empty, the city people hate it. I mean, the municipality hates it, the pool owners hate it. It sucks, you have no pools, it's a waste, summer sucks. Skateboarders say, you know what, I can move into this space and I can do things I've never done before. I can find value in here. So then, you know, you have skateboarders dipping down and coming up. That's where, as we know from Dogtown and the Z-Boys, skateboarding got very popular and then blew up. And since then, municipalities have gone on and they've said, okay, we'll build skate parks. We'll create new space for you to interact in new ways. And it basically, with skateboarding, just one example, and I think graffiti is another great example in terms of people using a transit system as a way to move their art through space. We're just coming back to the basic idea of asking how could other people be seeing an object, we see it in one way, and how could other people be making use of it in other ways? Knowing that this will happen, it's not if, but when, people are going to remix our urban space. So how do we create the space to engage that remix and make it hopefully more harmonious?